Hi there everybody, good morning and welcome to this Bridgevid featured lesson where I'm looking at planning the play in slam contracts today. Now planning the play in slam contracts is quite interesting, basically because a lot of the decisions that are going to affect the whole hand actually happen at trick one. So basically what happens is you find yourself in a slam contract and you need to make that plan at trick one. There's also a couple of things that come into it. Now, first of all, you might end up in a slam contract that looks too good to be true. Everything just looks perfect and like you're not going to have any problems at all. If you're in that sort of slam contract at trick one, your plan needs to be about thinking about the worst possible case scenario. And if that happened, is there a way that I can cope with it? On the other hand, you might be in a slam contract that you think has absolutely no chance at all. Now, these are the slam contracts where you need to look at the cracks in the walls and be a bit optimistic and think, is there a way that I could possibly make my contract? Now, one of the most important things about planning the play in slam contracts is that you don't actually feel the pressure involved with slams. Now, these should be a normal part of your game and you should be able to approach the declarer play like any other hand, like it was in 2 spades or 3 no trumps or anything like that. One of the things that I find that's a bit easy with slams is that most of the planning just happens at trick one, and from there you should be able to just play the hand. The problem with this though is that it can seem quite daunting because you just feel like you have so many winners or so few losers that it feels hard to construct a plan at trick one. So what we're going to do today is we are going to have a look into how we should be thinking and how we can go about planning the play in slams. And one other tip I've got is that if you have taken quite a long time in your auction, as slam contracts notoriously do, don't rush yourself in the play. Make sure you still go through the process of making your plan and executing it, because the minute you let that frazzle you, you're going to muck it up, and there's nothing worse than going down in a slam contract you could have made because you actually ended up basically rushing yourself. If you do end up that you do, I guess, take a bit more time and you miss a board, it's okay, just let the director know it was probably your fault. You will get 40% potentially on the next board, but what ends up happening is that you don't want to go down in your slam contract and then play the other board and rush through the other board and get a bad score on both of them. So don't put yourself under the pressure. Planning slam contracts should be a normal part of your game, and let's get into it and see how we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is basically go through them, and I want you to plan the play with me. I'm just going to put in the contracts, so there's not going to be too much in the way of bidding. We're not going to worry about that except for the very last board. It's all about planning the play. So on this one, we're actually going to be declaring 6 hearts by the south hand, and away we go. So on the hand, we're actually going to get the Queen of Diamonds lead. So here we are, we're in 6 hearts, we've got the Queen of Diamonds lead, we now need to plan the play. So the first thing I want to do in a suit contract is I want to count my losers. So I do this suit by suit. Now in hearts, I happen to have potentially 1 loser. I do have a 9 card fit, but if my trumps don't break, if they're 3-1 or worse yet, if they're 4-0, I will have 1 loser if they're 3-1. I'll have 2 losers and there's nothing I can do about it if they are 4-0. So I do have a heart loser to consider. When we take a look at the diamond suit, I don't have any losers. And when we take a look at the club suit, I don't have any losers either. In spades though, this is an interesting one. I actually have to count it as though I actually have 3 losers in my hand. Now the reason for this is that I'm actually considering all the losers from my hand, so from the south hand here, rather than thinking about it from the north hand. You might be thinking something like I might be able to trump spades or I might be able to discard them on the clubs, but that's actually your way of getting rid of losers. So we have to count them in the plan. So I've got my 3 spade losers. I definitely want to be able to get rid of them somehow. I've got 1 heart loser I basically can't get rid of if the trumps break poorly, and I have 2 heart losers if the trumps break really, really poorly. So let's get into it and figure out what we're going to do. Now the most obvious thing is that I can use the 5 clubs in dummy to take care of the 1 club in my hand and also the 3 small spades. And this would be the best start to my plan. So if I can actually discard all my spades on the extra club winners, I'll be in a very good spot here. So that's what I want to do for my spade losers. I know if my trumps don't break, I won't be able to get rid of a loser in trumps. Now the next question is, do I need to take my discards first or do I need to draw trumps first? Now on this one, because I'm discarding, there's no real reason that I need to actually basically not draw the trumps first. I should get in there and do that. So let's see how we go. We're going to start off, win this first one, and we're going to draw some trumps now and see how we go. Okay, now we get to this point and my trumps haven't broken. So I know that there's 3 with the West player and only 1 with East. I have to lose a heart here. Now I need to stop and reevaluate my plan. What do I want to do at this stage? Now, often when you've drawn trumps and it's only 1 trump outstanding and that trump is the boss trump, normally you just leave it out there. The opponents can take it when they want to. The reason for this is if you play another trump, what's going to happen is you're taking up 2 of your valuable trumps only for the price of 1 of theirs, and you're losing the trick anyway. If you were drawing a trump having to take up 2 of yours but you were winning, that's a different story, but this time it would be taking up 2 of their trumps for the price, 2 of your trumps, sorry, for the price of 1 of theirs, and they're getting to win. So normally in most hands we declare that wouldn't be something that we want to do. On this hand, however, it's a little bit different because what's happened is that I've only got 1 entry over to the north hand. I've only got my 1 club to play across to north to be able to win their club tricks. What it means is that if I happen to play a club now, and let's say that I keep playing clubs and I want to get my discards. Now, if my opponent is able to rough in, I'm going to have to lose a spade as well because I've got no way of getting back across over to the north hand to discard those spades. On the other hand, if I actually stop and draw that trump, wasting 2 of mine for the cost of 1 of theirs, even though they win, I'll actually be okay on this hand. So if I play out a heart now and they win their queen, what happens is I'll be able to win whatever lead they return, and then I'll be able to play my clubs and discard my spades safely without the risk of them trumping in. Now, this hand, so it's one of those ones that's a bit weird because it goes against the idea of playing a trump when you're down to the last one, and they've only got 1 left. But let's have a look at it on a different lead. Let's have a look at it on a spade lead. Now it would be a completely different scenario. So what would happen here is if they had actually let a spade, what would happen is that I'd have to win my ace of spades straight away. And if we went through the same process that we did last time, we'd draw the trumps, play another round, and then on our second round we get the bad news. We're in a completely different situation. Because what would happen here is that if I lost a trump now, I would automatically have to lose extra spade tricks. So I wouldn't be able to do that. What I would have to do is I would have to just play clubs now and absolutely hope that the person who had the remaining heart also happened to have 3 clubs as well. Because then what I could do is I could play off my ace, king and queen, they'd all win, and I could play my jack and discard my last spade, and if they won and trumped, that would be fine. So the lead could change how you declare a slam contract. Quite often it does. But yeah, this was a bit of an interesting one because we did have to draw that last trump when it was just the boss trump remaining. All right, let's have a look at our next one. So here we are with this lovely hand. Again, I'm just going to put it in a contract for us. So this time we're going to be playing 6 spades. So here we are in 6 spades and we're going to get the king of hearts lead. Now again, we want to make our plan in a slam contract right away from trick 1. Now if we take a look at the spades, I've got 1 spade loser. I might have to lose to the king. If we take a look at our hearts, I've got 1 heart loser. I have to lose to the ace, or in this case the king. I've got no losers in clubs and no losers in diamonds. Now there's going to be nothing that I can do about my heart loser. On the other hand, is there anything we can do with the spade loser? There is. What we could do is we could finesse spades. Again, we're in a 9-card fit. This time we are missing the king, but we could finesse the king if it's over with East. The interesting thing that happens here is if East has 3 to the king, what's going to happen is we're going to need to do the finesse twice. If they have 4 to the king, we're actually going to have a lot of problems. Now, keeping that in mind, if we want to do a finesse twice, what we actually need is 2 entries to our north hand. It looks like we've only got 1 entry on this hand. We've got the Queen of Clubs, which is a winner, but we've got no way of getting over to it, so that's not an entry. We do have the King of Diamonds, which is an entry, and that's our obvious one. But can you see another entry to this hand? Because we might need two to take the finesse twice. As it so happens, you do have a sneaky little entry, and that's actually the 10 of Diamonds. So what could happen on the hand is you could actually use the King of Diamonds as one entry and the 10 of Diamonds as another entry. But you have to be a bit careful in how you do this. So what you'd have to do is you'd actually have to play the 3 across to the 10 and then overtake your diamond jack with the king. And it didn't matter which order you did this, which one we did first, just we need to do that. So my plan on this hand from trick 1 is I must lose a heart, but I might be able to finesse my spade. Now to finesse the spade, if they break 3-1, I am going to need 2 entries to my north hand. I've got the one obvious entry of the King of Diamonds, but I have another entry with the 10 of Diamonds. So I have to make sure I use both of those as best as possible. So let's see how we go. So they start off with a heart and they continue it. And here we go, we're going to rough in on this one, aren't we? Now at this stage, this is where I need to be careful about my entries. So what I could do the first time, just to make it really clear to myself, is I could actually play the 3 across to the 10 right now. And that's not a problem at all, because I've got the ace, king, queen, jack, 10, I can win any of them. Alternatively, if you wanted to, just to look fun, you could do something like playing the queen across to the king at this stage, and remembering to play your 3 across to the 10 next time. So what we could do is we could take our finesse in spades. And it worked, so that's great. Now, if we hadn't have done this process of basically checking our entries, what we'd have to do now, if we didn't have a second entry, is actually play down the ace of hearts, and we'd actually end up losing a spade trick as well if they did break 3 and 1. On the other hand, if we were a bit careful, what we could do now, we can play across to our second entry, hoping that it doesn't get roughed, and this time we can take the finesse again. And this way we're going to end up making our slam contract in 6 spades by using our entries to the best possible way. It's a little bit sad on the hand that the Queen of Clubs wasn't an entry, but it gives us an opportunity to potentially pick up on the board if people don't spot that second entry. So that was that one. What we'll do is move on to our next one now. Okay, so here we are with this one, and again, just placing a contract. This time I'm going to put you in 6 hearts. So pass, 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 here we go. 6 hearts is the contract, and we get the King of Spades lead. So again, we've got to stop and make our plan. Now in my hearts, I have one loser. I might have to lose to the Queen. In spades, I don't have any losers, counting from the long trump hand. In diamonds, I have one loser. I might have to lose to the king. And in clubs, I have no losers at all. Now, my only chance is going to be if I can finesse one of the cards that are missing. So if I can finesse the Queen of Hearts, or if I can finesse the King of Diamonds. Now, I'd like to be able to do both of them. But my problem is I only have one entry to the north hand. Only one. How am I going to do this? How am I going to decide which finesse that I want to take? Now, there's a couple of ways of thinking about this one. Intuitively, what we want to do is we want to finesse a heart. But let's stop and actually think about the consequences of doing this. Now, the first thing that happens is we want to consider the win cases from both scenarios. Now, what I mean by that is, what if East had, for instance, both the Queen of Hearts and the King of Diamonds? Now, if we finessed a heart and East did have the Queen, we haven't actually necessarily gotten rid of any losers yet. If East had 4 hearts, or if East happened to have even 5 hearts, we haven't actually been able to reduce our heart losers as well. This is because once we finesse once, then if we cash our ace and our king, if they have 4 of them or even 5, they're still going to get to win a heart trick anyway. On the other hand, if we finesse the diamond and East did have the King of Diamonds, we would reduce our losers by 1 straight away. So we definitely reduce our losers. Just based on this information, it's actually going to be better to finesse the diamond rather than the heart, which seems counterintuitive because hearts are our trump, so we want to do that. There's another second reason that we want to finesse diamonds rather than hearts here. And that is the fact that there is a strong possibility that if it doesn't work, there is going to be a doubleton Queen of Hearts. So what I mean by that is we want to consider the scenario when the diamond finesse doesn't work, and also the scenario if, for instance, the heart finesse didn't work. Now let's say that our heart finesse didn't work. Now we'd automatically lose a trick in hearts, and then we'd have to fall back to basically playing our ace of diamonds and hoping that there was a singleton king. I don't think that's going to happen too often. On the other hand, if we did finesse the diamond and it lost to the king over in the west hand, there's still a reasonable chance that when we cash our ace and our king of hearts, that the queen might be a doubleton with one of the players. So based on these two reasons, it's much better to finesse the diamond rather than finesse the heart on the hand, which is so counterintuitive because you feel like you want to get in there and draw those trumps, and a finesse against the queen is a better option. But yeah, what we want to do, win the ace at trick 1, that's our only entry, so we have to make sure we do a bit of work with it. And then what we want to do is play a diamond and take that finesse now. If it works, we've straight away reduced our losers, and all we're going to do at this stage is actually lose one heart trick on the hand. If it didn't work, what we'd end up having to do is play out the ace king of hearts and hope that the queen was a doubleton. If we took the heart finesse, what you could see is that if, I'll just show you all the hands at this stage. There we go. If we did take the heart finesse at this stage, and both finesses work, take a look at it. The finesse for the queen does work, the finesse for the king does work as well. But if we take the finesse in hearts, so after our first lead, if we play a heart, we still have to lose a heart trick, because once we cash the ace and the king, because of the poor break, they're going to end up getting a heart trick anyway. So much better to take the diamond finesse here than the heart finesse, and it involved a bit of planning at trick 1 because you had to go against the intuitive thing of basically taking the finesse in hearts. Okay, let's have a look at our next one, and this time we're not just looking at a small slam, we're actually looking at a grand slam contract. So we're going to get ourselves to, it could be 7 no trumps, it could be 7 spades, it doesn't matter which. For, I guess, viewer impact, let's play 7 no trumps. Why not? Okay, so here we go, we're in 7 no trumps, and we're going to get a heart lead. Alright, this is a pretty nice looking hand. If we take a look at it in no trumps, what we actually want to do is we want to count winners, not count losers. So this is how many tricks I can take home right now. In spades, what I've got is the ace, the king, and the queen, so I've got 3 tricks there. In hearts, I've got the ace, the king, and the queen, that's another 3. Same in clubs, and also in diamonds. And I'd have to be a little bit careful about how I played the diamonds, making sure I unblocked the ace and the king first. So that's a total of 12 tricks for me. Now I actually need to get a 13th trick from somewhere. Now the most obvious place is going to be from spades, and this is one of those hands that just seems far too good to be true. What you need to do with these hands that are far too good to be true is consider what is the worst case scenario. Now the worst case scenario on the hand is that the spades actually break 4 and nil. Now if that were to happen, I might have some problems because I am missing the jack and the 10 as well, and it'd be reasonably likely that the opponents would be able to win a spade trick. So when things go or look too good to be true, what you want to be doing is considering the worst possible case scenario. So what I want you to do now is consider what would happen if each player held 4 spades. So what would happen, could you make all the tricks if West held 4 spades? And could you make all the tricks if East held 4 spades? Let's consider it for a second. Okay, so it's interesting on this hand because if one player has 4 spades, you can never cope with the scenario. If the other player has 4 spades though, you will be able to cope with it. Now what happens, and I'll open this up for you and show you all the hands. If our East player has 4 spades, you can actually pick up the spade suit. Now the way that you would do this is you could play the ace of spades first, and when we see that West doesn't have a spade, so they're going to discard, we're going to know that East has got 4 spades. Now at this stage you'll actually be able to finesse their jack, their 10 and their 7. And I'll go through the way that we're going to do that. So we'd win the first one, we'd cash the ace of spades, and we'd see West show out. Now at this stage what we can do is we could play another spade, and if West puts in the 7, it's nice and easy. We could just play our 8 and win. On the other hand, if East actually put in the 10, it would force out our queen, and then what we could do is we could cross back over to the north hand and play another spade. And at this point they're going to have their jack and their 7 finessed. If they put in the jack, we get to win our king and then our 9's good. And if they put in the 7, we just simply win our 8 or our 9. So we would be able to cope with the scenario that East has 4 spades. On the other hand, if West had 4 spades, we actually can't cope with it at all. Now the reason for this is, and you'll have to do a bit of visualization here, is that even if we had actually cashed the king of spades first, if West now had the jack, the 10 and the 7, they'd actually be able to force out our ace and then be able to win a trick. So what I mean by that is pretending that they were over in our West hand so that they're not in East. If I played a small one, if West had the jack, the 10 and the 7, what they could do is they could put in the 10 and that would force out the ace. Then I'd just have the queen and the 9 down with South, and the 10 and the 7, or the jack and the 7, either or, would be sitting in West, and they would be guaranteed to get a spade trick. Now the way that we figure out which hand we could cope with and which one we couldn't is based on how many honors they have and how many we have sitting over them. So what it works out as is there's 2 honors the opponents have, so we need 2 honors sitting over their honors. So what we have to do is we have to play from the hand that has only 1 honor in it first. Now if we do this, if they did happen to break 4 and 0, we will be able to pick up the suit. If the other player happened to have 4 and 0, we were never making the contract anyway, and there was just no chance of it. So when we have to think about the worst case scenario, that's what we want to do. And on this hand, if we did that, we'd find ourselves in a better position. If we didn't, we might be tempted to use one of those, I guess, little rules that we have of basically playing the honor from the hand that's got 2 first. But this isn't a scenario where that rule should apply, because what we're trying to think about is what happens if they do break 4 and 0, and that would be the only way of being able to cope with it. If East had 4, we can't cope with it if West has 4. Okay, let's move on to our next one, and feel free to ask questions if you are watching live at the moment. So here we are on this one, and this time we're still playing no trumps. What I'm going to do is put us in 6 no trumps by South. Okay, and on this hand we're going to get a lead of the Jack of Hearts. Alright, again, 6 no trumps. What we want to do, we want to count our winners that we can take straight away. Now, in spades, I've got 3 winners. I've got a 4th winner in theory because I've got the ace, the king, the queen, and the jack, but I don't actually have 4 cards in the suit. That means I can never actually get 4 winners. So I've only got 3 here. I've got 3 winners in hearts, that's a total of 6 so far, 2 winners in diamonds, so that's 8, and 1 winner in clubs for 9. It means I need to come up with 3 extra tricks for my side. And the most obvious place, and the only place really, is going to be in the club suit. Now, how do I want to attack this one? This is actually one of the most common positions that comes up, where you're missing 2 of the honors, the king and the queen. And basically you can afford to lose 1 trick, but you can't afford to lose any more than 1 trick. And there's a nifty way of getting around it, and it's a position that you should know because it does come up so frequently, and mastering it will improve your results quite a bit. So it's a position where you've got the ace, the jack, and the 10. In this case, I've got the 9 and the 8 as well, but it doesn't matter too much. So what you can do for the double finesse is you can play a club and simply put in, it would be the jack, the 10, the 9, or the 8. They're all equal. And basically you're assuming that you're going to lose to one of the honors in East. East will then play a card back at us, which we can win. And now what we want to do is we want to take the finesse again. So we want to play the suit, and again we're going to take the finesse. And this time it did work. But we'd also know that West happened to have 4 clubs, and we'd have to get back to the south hand and take the known finesse now. So this is a position called a double finesse, where in this case we're missing the king and the queen, and what we want to do is finesse once and then get back in and finesse again. Now I'll go through why this play technique is so valuable. So I'll open up the hand and we can have a look at them all. Right from trick 1. Okay, so from trick 1, if we have a look at it here, we did lose to the singleton queen if we did take this double finesse. That's fine though. It was fine to lose to the singleton queen because we could then finesse the king. Now, talking about the scenarios where the double finesse does and doesn't work, basically, if ever the honours are split, so if East has 1 and West has 1, this maneuver will work. So you'll always lose to the honour in East, but you will never lose to the honour in West. The other time that it would work is if West had both honour cards. So if West had both the king and the queen, and it doesn't matter how many cards in the suit they had, as long as West had the king and the queen, this play technique would also work. Now, the time that it doesn't work is if East has both honours. Now, there's a couple of scenarios to think about. If East had both the king and the queen, and they had another card as well, we were never actually able to basically only lose 1 trick, because we'd have to always lose 2 tricks. On the other hand, if East did have just the king and the queen as a doubleton, there was a possibility that we could have cashed the ace first, and then we would have dropped one of their cards and then just have to lose to 1. But this is so anti-percentage compared to the double finesse option. Cashing the ace just caters for East having either a singleton honour or having specifically a doubleton king-queen. On the other hand, doing this double finesse maneuver, it works anytime each player has 1 honour, and it doesn't matter which honour, it could be the king or the queen. We're going to lose once to East, but we're never going to lose to West. It also works anytime West has both of the honours. It's quite a common position that comes up. You could also just have the ace, the jack and the 10 and not the 9 and the 8, and the maneuver would work the same. You should lead low to the 10 the first time and then lead low to the jack the second time. The only thing that would change this is if you did see an honour card appear from the West hand. In that case, you'd want to gobble it up with your ace straight away. Okay, on to board 6. Now this time what we're going to do is we're going to play another no trump contract and just 6 no trumps here. So 6 no trumps by South, we'll get that one up for you, and we're going to have a lead of the Jack of Hearts. Okay, so again, we want to make our plan in no trumps. Let's count our tricks straight from the start. In spades, I've only got 2 tricks, just the ace and the king that I could take right now. In hearts, again, just the ace and the king, so we're up to 4. 4 tricks as well in clubs gets us up to 8, and 3 tricks in diamonds gets us up to 11. So I've got 11 tricks, but my goal is to get 12 tricks. Now, it basically appears the only option is going to be getting an extra trick out of spades. But how do we play this spade suit? Now, it's interesting. You might want to think I should lead out the jack to finesse the queen. But that actually won't work. The reason for that is that if you played out the jack and they put the queen on top of it with the East hand, it's not actually a finesse because you don't have the 10. You'd still be setting up the opponent's 10. So if ever you're going to do a finesse for the queen, you need to have, if you're leading out the jack, you need to have the 10 as well. If you're leading towards the jack, you don't need the 10, but if you're leading the jack out of hand, you also need the 10 as well. So we wouldn't be able to do the finesse by leading out the jack of spades. But we do actually have a finesse opportunity available in spades, which is a bit of an interesting one. It's called an indirect finesse. Now, what happens with this indirect finesse, and I'll win this first trick, is that we actually want to lead a small spade from our south hand and lead it up towards the jack in the dummy. And I'll go through why this is. Let's see how it works. So the first thing that happens is if West now has the queen, they've got a decision. If they play it, we're simply going to play small and we will have set up our extra trick in spades. On the other hand, if they don't play the queen, they just simply play the 8, we can put in the jack now and it's going to win the trick. So we're going to set up the trick straight away if West happens to have the queen. On the other hand, if East had the queen, they're going to take our jack of spades right now. But what would happen if they did take our jack of spades is that we'd be able to have a fallback position where if they took the jack of spades here with the queen, we would have the fallback position that the spades might have broken 3-3. Now what would happen here is that once we cash the ace and the king, if they were 3-3, our 3 of spades would actually become a winner. Now the reason that this is so far superior than any other play, even for instance cashing the ace and the king, if you did that, what you're basically doing is just putting your jack out there to be gobbled up by the queen. The queen's always going to gobble up that jack when they can see it's a singleton. And then if they don't break, you're going to lose to the 10 as well. So what happens by doing this indirect finesse maneuver is that we actually end up with a double chance. We end up with the chance that we do get to score our jack because West happens to hold the queen. We also end up with the opportunity that if spades break 3 and 3, we are going to be able to take 3 spade tricks anyway. So having a look at this position here, we get to this stage. When we play up the small spade, West is in a bit of a problem now. If they play the queen, they've taken their trick, but we've set up the jack. If they don't take the queen, we're going to put the jack in and win a trick anyway. Now, if they were 3-3, what would happen is this would work anyway, because basically we'd end up, even if East was able to capture the jack with the queen, we'd still end up getting all our 3 spade tricks anyway and making our contract. It's really important to remember what your goal is at trick 1 from a slam contract. And I knew I had 11 tricks. I only needed 1 more trick, so I can lose 1 trick and with the possibility of setting up another. So this is what we'd call an indirect finesse. And it's important that I did this basically before cashing my ace or my king, and my king. And the reason is if I cashed out the ace and the king first, what happens is I just leave the jack bare. It means there's no finesse possibility. On the other hand, if I cash the ace, I can still do it if I lead small because I've got a finesse possibility now. If they play the queen, I can still play low. If they play the 9, I can actually put in the jack and hope that it does win the trick. So an indirect finesse, it's basically leading up to an honor and you know that they could win their honor. Basically, but if they do, they will be setting up an extra trick for your side. It often happens when you might be leading up towards a king or something like that. Okay, so that's how we'd end up making 6 spades on that one. Now, on to our, 6 no trumps. So on to board 7, and this time we're going to be playing in a 6 heart contract. North's going to have some more hearts than us, don't worry about that too much. Just pretend you are in 6 hearts, even though the declarer's hand does have the short trumps. And what we're going to get is the 10 of diamonds lead. Okay, so here we are in 6 hearts, and our first thing, stop and count our losers when we are in a suit contract. So in our heart suit, we actually have 1 loser. We could lose to the king. In spades, we don't have any losers. In diamonds, we do have a loser, and in clubs, we don't have any losers as well. Now this is an interesting one because we've got options on this hand. We've got the option of a finesse, and we also have the option of a discard. Now for the discard to work, basically what happens is that we have 3 club winners between the 2 hands, but only South has 2, or North only has 3, South has just 2, and what it means is that the 3rd club could be used to discard a diamond. So if as South I could basically cash my ace of clubs, then I could get over to the king and the queen of clubs. What I could then do is discard the diamond 3 on the final club. Now the question is, what order of operations do I want to do? Normally what we'd like to be able to do is draw trumps first. The problem is, once they've knocked out my ace of diamonds, let's say that I did the heart finesse and it didn't work. I lost to the king. What would happen here is that the opponents have automatically set up their diamond winner and they'll be able to beat me in the contract. As a result, it means that it's more important for me to not take the finesse yet, but to actually try to get my discard first. Now, what I'd want to do is potentially win my ace of clubs first, and then I'd end up crossing over to my clubs and playing the king of clubs. Now, at this stage, I can pitch my 3 of diamonds. I have run the risk that the opponents might be able to trump my 3rd club, but this would mean that somebody just started off with a doubleton club. Or another way of thinking about it, it means with the distribution, somebody had 6 clubs. The other thing that happens is that if East was the player that did have 2 clubs, I would have seen them rough already, and I'd be able to over-rough them and then try to take the finesse anyway. So what I could do at this stage, if I had taken my discard, I could then get back across to my south hand and I could take the finesse anyway and see how we go taking the finesse. And this time, if it loses, what's going to happen is that I haven't been defeated in my contract because they're no longer able to take a diamond. If you were quite a cautious person, one other thing that you could do right at the start of the hand to basically ensure this contract's safety is you could actually start off at trick 2 after you've won your ace of diamonds. Rather than playing at club, actually just play out the ace of hearts. Now, this might not be the greatest ploy at match points, but it's definitely going to be a good option at imps. So what happens is we're in a 10 card fit. We know we've got 2 losers. We're happy to lose 1 trick because we're only in 6. We're not in 7. What it means is that you could play the ace of hearts, and what would happen is that if there was a trump outstanding, it would be the boss trump, but it would be the only trump. And what would happen is you could then take your discard and you don't run the risk that somebody's going to be able to ruff with a low trump. There is also an added benefit by doing this in terms of the safety that somebody, you never know, could have a singleton king as well. The opponents only have 3 cards in hearts, so there is a reasonable possibility that it could be a singleton king. So this would be the safest way to go about this hand. Cash the ace of hearts first. If you see the king appear, you could just simply draw trumps. If you didn't see the king appear, you only saw 2 hearts, leave the king outstanding, and then at that stage what you'd want to do is play your clubs and then take your discard. Now at this stage, if both players started off with at least 2 clubs, you can play your king. Even if they ruff, you'll be able to get rid of your diamond because they're going to be ruffing with the king. It would be the only heart that they're going to have left. So this one was about having a few different options and evaluating which one that you wanted to take. I'll take you straight back to the start of the hand and just go through what our problems were. Also, what would happen on this hand is that if the opponents hadn't led a diamond, we'd be in a much better position. If they had led something like a heart or a spade or even a club, what you could do is you could take the finesse in hearts at that stage with no risk. And that's because the opponents haven't set up a diamond winner that they could take as soon as they get in. So this is another one where the lead can actually dramatically affect the hand. Where what happened was when they've led a diamond, we've got a heart loser and they've instantaneously set up a winner in diamonds. If they lead a spade or a club, they have a winner in diamonds, but it's a delayed winner. They can't win it straight away. They have to basically knock out our diamond ace and then they could win it. So that would be a much better scenario for you. So a lead can definitely change the play of a slam. Okay, on to our next one. And this time we are going to be playing in a contract. What board are we up to? A 6 heart contract. So let's see how we go in 6 hearts. Alright, and we're going to get the 10 of spades lead. Why not? Okay, so 6 hearts. We have a beautiful fit in hearts, don't we? We've got a 10 card heart fit, so we've definitely got no losers there, having the ace, the king, and the queen. In spades, we've got no losers as well. We do have 3 winners, but we can't take them separately because we've both got 2 spades. Don't have any losers in our diamonds. In clubs, it's interesting. How many losers do you think you have? It kind of looks like you only have one club to lose, but in reality, we have to consider it as two club losers. The reason for this is if the ace captures the king, we can then win the queen, but we then have to lose to the jack. So we have to consider this as two club losers, which means we need to consider how we could minimize our losers. There's actually only one real way you can do this on this hand, and that's what's called an indirect finesse, which I've already mentioned before. Now, the way the indirect finesse would work in clubs is that what we'd want to do is from the north hand, we'd want to lead a small club. Now, if East had the ace, they've got a problem here. If they play the ace, we can simply play low. If they don't play the ace, if they just play a low card, we could play the king, and hopefully the ace isn't with West. And if we were able to play the king and the East had the ace, we'd actually get to score the king. Then what we want to do is we'd want to get back across to the north hand and do it again. We'd want to get back to north, lead a club, and if East had the ace, again they've got the same problem. They have to either play the ace, which will set up our other honor, or instead what they could do is just play low, but we'll get to score two tricks that way. So what we want to do is this indirect finesse, and we want to do it twice. We want to be able to lead clubs twice from the north hand. Now the problem with this is that we only have two entries to north. North only has two winners. So we actually need to do this work right now before we draw trumps. We need to play a club straight away from the north hand. We also need to be very careful to use both of their entries. So what we'd want to do is we'd want to win the queen of spades. At this stage, play a club. Now, what we can try to do is this indirect finesse position, where if West has the ace, they're going to capture our queen, but there was nothing we could do. If West doesn't have the ace, though, they have to play low. At this stage, we'd be in our hand, and we could draw trumps now, because we have used our entry effectively. And you'd only need to draw 2 rounds, maybe 3 if they broke very poorly. And then you could cross back over to your second entry, and again do the same maneuver, lead up. If East plays the ace, they've won their ace, but we get to win our king. If they don't play it, we get to score our king straight away. So how did we know to do this from trick 1? Well, we'll take a look at it all and see how we go. So counting our losers, I'll just get back to trick 1. Counting our losers, we had no heart losers, no spade losers, no diamond losers, but we did have to count it as 2 clubs. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to stop the ace from capturing the king. Now, the thing that you might have felt like being able to do is, well, what if I can draw trumps? And then I can lead out my king of clubs. Or you might even cash your other winners first. But if you ever have to lead out your king of clubs from hand, the problem's going to be the ace gets to capture the king. At this stage, you can then win your queen, but you'll then have to lose a trick in clubs as well. So this one involved a little bit of planning, a little bit of entry management, and basically getting that decision right straight away from trick 2. Indirect finesses, great thing to have. Okay, let's move on to our next one, and this time we are also playing in 6 hearts. So we're going to have a 6 heart contract, and the opening lead is going to be a small spade. Okay, so here we are, 6 hearts. Again, we want to start to count our losers. In hearts, I don't have any losers. In spades, no losers there. If the suit does break 4 and 1 or 5 and 0, I will have 1 loser, but there's nothing I can do about that. In diamonds, I've got 1 loser, counting from the the south hand, sorry. And in clubs, I've also got 1 loser. So a total of 2 losers on this hand. Now, it's interesting to think about what we could do to potentially get rid of losers. The first thing that pops to mind is I could just take the club finesse, and what would happen is that I'd be able to reduce my losers by not losing a club. I'd be able to capture the king. There's actually another way you could reduce your losers as well, and that's actually the indirect finesse in diamonds. So I'll show you how that'll work. First things first, let's draw the trumps on this hand. Didn't want to lose that one. On this hand, there's no reason not to draw the trumps. We don't have to do any trumping at this stage. So we could draw 2 rounds of trumps and play a diamond. Now, the way the indirect finesse would work is that here, if West has the ace, they could play it and we could just play low. What would happen then is the king of diamonds is set up and we could actually discard our queen of clubs on the king of diamonds. And this would be a way of getting rid of our loser without actually having to take the finesse. You might as well pretend that the queen was just the 2. You could just discard it. So that's another way of getting rid of our loser. We've got the indirect finesse in diamonds, where what we could do is set up the king to discard our queen, or we've got our finesse in clubs. Which one do we want to take? Is one better than the other? It actually turns out they're both equally as good. They're both a 50% chance. But what we want to do is we want to be able to take both because we're bridge players. We're greedy people. The question is, how can you take both? Now, it's interesting and it's funny to see why this is. But if you take the indirect finesse first and that fails, you can take the direct finesse in clubs and that might work. So what I mean by that is that if we ended up, we've drawn trumps, pretend, and we played the diamond and we put in the king and it actually got taken by East's ace. So East was able to capture the ace, the king with the ace. What we could do is we could always get back to the north hand and we could take the club finesse anyway. So we could get back over there and we could take the club finesse, and if that worked, we'd be out of the woods. We'd be home and make our contract. On the other hand, if what we did was we actually took our club finesse first, what would happen is that if the club finesse lost, we can no longer rely on our diamond chance because we've lost a club and the opponents have to win the ace of diamonds as well. So what's the difference in these two? The difference comes down to the finesse positions. Now with one of our finesses, what we'd call a direct finesse in clubs, we don't have to necessarily lose any tricks at all. On the other hand, if we're going to take our finesse in diamonds, we do potentially have to lose the trick to the ace of diamonds. Now there's a good rule, if there's 2 finesses you want to take, what you want to be able to do is take the one that you have to lose a trick in first. So if you take the diamond finesse first, and it does work, you've done your job already. So if we take the diamond finesse and our West player does have the ace, it means that your king will be set up for a discard straight away. On the other hand, if what you do is you take the club finesse, you might lose to the king and you can't do the diamond finesse later. This is what's called combining your chances. Okay, we'll go back to just kibitzing south, and this time what we're going to do is we're going to play a contract of 6 spades. So 6 spades by south, and the lead's going to be the queen of clubs. Alright, so nice hand here. Let's count our losers. So in spades, we don't have any spades that we have to lose. In hearts, we have 1 heart we have to lose. In clubs, we don't have any losers at all. We do have 1 loser, counting from the south hand. We can win the ace and the king, but then we might have to lose the 2. And in diamonds, we don't have any losers either, because we've got the ace and the king to cover our 7 and our 5. So with our losers, we had 1 heart to lose, and we also had 1 club. Now, which of these losers can we do something about? There's a couple of opportunities on this hand. One opportunity is that you could set up your diamonds and you'd actually be able to discard them. The other opportunity is that you could actually end up basically trumping a club, and by far that's going to be the best opportunity for you. So what you'd want to do is be able to trump a club basically using the short trumps in the north hand. Now the interesting part about this though is that you can't actually draw all the trumps first. If we need to trump something, it means that we do have to have a trump in north's hand. So we'll have a look at how we should play it. So we definitely want to win the ace of clubs, basically because we have to. And at this stage we could draw 2 rounds of trumps. But we can't actually draw any more, and this is because we have to trump a club with our spade. If we don't do that, we're going to find that we get ourselves into trouble and have to rely basically on setting up our diamonds. On the other hand, if we trump our club now, what will happen is we've reduced our loser straight away. Now at this stage, we've only got our loser in hearts that's left. What you'd want to do now is simply cross back over and finish drawing your trumps. Now the key part here was that what you wanted to do was make sure that you got rid of that loser by trumping before you got rid of all the trumps in the dummy. If the dummy didn't have any trumps, you weren't going to be able to do that. If we lost them all, we'd end up basically with a few problems. There would be a solution to get around it. See if you can figure out the solution at a later stage. You can watch the video back on the BridgeVid website and try to figure out the solution if you did end up accidentally drawing too many trumps and that you did have to basically come up with the solution of how you could still make your contract. So that was this one. Okay, on to our next one, and this time we're going to be playing a 6 no trump contract. So 6 no trumps, and we're going to have the Jack of Hearts lead. Wow, this one's actually, no, I don't want 6 no trumps. Why don't we have 7 no trumps? Yeah, we want 7 no trumps, not 6. One more for the road. And again, the Jack of Hearts lead. Okay, so this time, sorry, we are in 7 no trumps, so we have to take all the tricks, can't afford to lose any of them. So let's get started on counting our winners. We've got 3 winners in spades, 3 winners in hearts, 3 winners in diamonds, and how many winners do you have in clubs? It's interesting, it looks like we've got 4 winners in clubs. So it looks like we've got all 13 tricks that we need, but remember, when things look too good to be true, we want to consider the worst case scenario. Now the worst case scenario is what if one player has 4 and the other player only has 1? Now, if this does happen, you can pick up the suit. You could finesse the Jack either way. If I knew that West had 4, what I could do is I could lead the 10 and I could actually finesse the Jack and I could just run the 10. On the other hand, if I thought that East had 4, I could lead, say, the 7 or the 8 from North, and I could put in the 10 or the 9 from South and finesse them. So I know that I have the opportunities to pick up the suit if they are 4 and 1, or even 5 and 0. But how am I going to figure out which player would possibly have 4? Do I just guess, or is there a way of going about it? What I could do is I could actually leave this decision till last. If you know this is the only basically thing that it could come down to, and you're in 7 no trumps, you can't lose any tricks anyway. So a good thing to do would be, I guess, an information gathering exploratory mission, where what you could do is you could actually cache all the winners in the other suits first. And this might get you some information. So if we take a look at it, if we cached all our hearts, what we're going to see is we're going to see our East player actually discard on the 3rd one. What would we know about the distribution of the hearts now? We'd know West had 5 hearts and East only had 2. So that's something that we should just, I guess, put in the memory bank. Now let's cash out our spades and see what we find out. Okay, so we cash out the spades. And on the 3rd spade, again, our East player shows out. So East only had 2 spades as well. That seems a bit interesting, doesn't it? So East only had 2 hearts and 2 spades. It means at this stage they're more likely to be a player that would have 4 clubs. So we'll keep going on our exploratory mission and let's cash out our diamonds. Cash out a couple of them, play the last one, and see what happens. Okay, so at this stage we know that West only had 2 diamonds, or basically that East had 5. Now, if you were paying attention to all the discards, we could actually build a full count on the hand. We know that East started off with 2 cards in spades, 2 cards in hearts, and 5 cards in diamonds. It actually means East must have 4 cards in clubs. Alternatively, another way of thinking about this, if you didn't have the full count on the hand, would just be to note that East was a player who actually did only have two cards in both hearts and spades. It just means they're more likely to have more cards in the other suits. So what I'd be thinking at this stage, and I'd know it if I had a full count on the hand, but if I was guessing, I'd be guessing that if anybody's only going to have one club, it's going to be East. So what I'd want to do is I'd want to cash a big club from over in my north hand and play out the Queen of Clubs here. Now, if this worked, what I'd then want to do is finesse our last club, and I'd get to finesse their Jack. And at this stage, I'd make my contract. On the other hand, if I thought it was actually the West player who was going to have the length in clubs, I still have the same sort of options. What I could do if I thought West was the player that had 4 clubs, instead I could simply play a small club from my hand, and this is if I thought West had 4, I could win the ace, and then I could come back across to the king. Now, if we had seen East show out here or not have any more clubs, what we could then do is we could finesse against the West player. So this was a hand where basically if you wanted to be able to see if things went wrong, how would I be able to cope with it? And okay, on to our next one and our last one for today, where what we're going to have is a contract. I think I've gone past it. Sorry, I'll have to get back into it and run you through basically to get to the right board. Sorry about this. You've already seen all these ones. Okay, so lucky last one for the day, and this one's a bit of a funny one. What's going to happen on this hand, and this is the only one that's got some bidding, I'm going to say that there was a 4 spade preempt by our West player. We had North double, and I don't mind bidding 6 no trumps with this hand. Why not? I'm going to put you in 6 no trumps and see how you go. Alright, so 6 no trumps, and we're going to have West lead out a heart. Let's plan the play. And this is a bit of an advanced one for people, but just to get you thinking outside the box. And I will let you know the bidding is a big hint on this one. Think about what West has shown. Alright, so at this stage I'd be thinking about this, about my winners. I've definitely got 4 clubs, definitely got 3 diamonds, definitely got 3 hearts, and 1 spade. But I do need an extra winner because I'm only at 11 out of my 12. Now, the most likely option for spades or for extra winners is spades, and it's the only option you have. And this is actually a very similar position to the one before we had in clubs, where this is a double finesse position, where what I'd want to do normally is lead a small spade from our north hand, and then I'd want to put in the 10 in our south hand. What I'd then do is I'd cross back to north, and I'd then play a small spade again and put in the jack this time. This was the double finesse position where it works if either player has an honor card. And that's how I'd want to play the spade suit normally on a normal day. That's what I'd do. But this isn't any normal day. What I've had is I've had a 4 spade preempt from our West player. Now, this is a bit funny. First of all, I can realize that our West player only actually has 7 spades. And this is because I've got 6 in my hand. They preempted, so they should have 7 or 8. It means East has no spades at all. So with this information, is there anything that we could do? Now, ideally what would have happened on this hand is that my West player, if I could have whispered in their ear, they would have actually led a spade for me. And let's have a look at what would happen if they led a spade. If they led a small spade, I'd just get to score my 10 or my jack. If they led the king of spades, what I'd be able to do is I'd win my ace, I'd have to lose to the queen, but then I'd end up getting to score my 10 or my jack later. So that would have been really, really nice. On the other hand, what they've done is they've actually led a heart at me. Now, it's a funny hand here because what we can do, we can mark West with 7 cards in spades. Truth be told, it means they don't have very many in the other suits. Now this is actually one that we could make the hand on an end play, and I'll show you how it works. So what would happen here, and this is using the information from the bidding, I could actually win all the tricks in the other suits. Now, how many tricks am I winning in the other suits? I've got 3 diamonds, 3 hearts, and 4 clubs. So that's a total of 10 tricks that I'm actually going to be winning in the other suits. Now, what it means is that my poor West player, I might actually open this up and show you what's happening. My poor West player, they're now at the point where they're going to end up very quickly with only having spades in their hand. Once I end up playing out all my winners, poor West is sitting there and they've only got spades left. They don't have any other cards in their hand. Now, if I got you to a position that was something like this, is there a way that you can make only lose 1 trick in spades? So with a position like this, how do you only lose 1 trick in spades? You can't cash the ace because that would mean that what would happen is that they'd get to win their king or their queen, but have a look at what would happen if you played out the jack. If they play small, then you just get to win your trick anyway. If they win the queen, now what would happen is that West is end played. They have to lead a spade because they're only down to spade cards in their hand. And because of the positioning, they're basically leading into your ace 10 and giving you 2 tricks. If they came out the king, you'd just capture it with the ace and your 10 would have become a winner. So this was an interesting hand, basically just on the fact of the bidding and how the bidding can change things, and also how your style can change based on, I guess, the things that you know about a hand. So the funny part is that one thing that was right a couple of hands ago, taking this double finesse option when you do have the ace, the queen and the jack, can be completely wrong when you've got information such as the preempt here. So I hope you enjoyed this featured lesson on planning the play in slam contracts. What I'd say is all these hands have just been so important that you actually plan the play at trick 1. A lot of the time we'll just impulsively play a card at trick 1 in a slam, but this is really the time that you do make a plan. If you make a plan at trick 1, the rest of the hand goes so quickly. It's all about just getting that first step in, making your plan, and then executing it. Don't stress out if you do end up in a slam contract going down. Basically slams or small slams should be about 50% to make. So if you're not going down in slam contracts, you're definitely not bidding enough of them. And last but not least, if everything looks too good to be true, it probably is. Think about that worst case scenario. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.